Hey, hello everyone. It's 12 noon. It's 12:01. We're about to start our webinar. A few instructions first. My name is Ross Delston. I'm joined by my colleague Lourdes Miranda, who I'll introduce in a minute. If you have any technical problems, by all means, use the chat box and let us know. We have people standing by to resolve it. We're recording this webinar and we will make it available at a later date. We will also make the slides available at a later date. When we send you your certificate of participation for ACAMS credit, you'll also get a copy of the presentation. If you have questions, there is a chat box that you can use, but Lourdes and I will get to those at the end of the hour. And to learn more about AllSec's anti-money laundering services, please contact Sam Moses, Director of AML Services in Irving, Texas, 214-492-6015, or email sam.moses@allsectech.com. And thank you to AllSec for hosting this webinar. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I will just briefly introduce myself. I've been in the AML space for about 19 years, starting at the IMF, International Monetary Fund, written a couple of articles, a couple of them co-authored with Lourdes Miranda on cryptocurrency and BTMs. Let's see, what else have we done? Lots of presentations on this subject, very hot topic. Lourdes Miranda has over 25 years of expertise, mainly on the intelligence and law enforcement side. She has written a number of articles on cryptocurrency, some of them with me, and is a real expert in the field. We've got a lot to cover, including the regulatory landscape for Bitcoin teller machines, which we will focus on exchangers, cryptocurrency exchangers. That's the term that the US government uses. We'll talk about compliance do's and don'ts. We'll briefly mention the major enforcement cases in the cryptocurrency space. We'll talk about how BTMs, Bitcoin teller machines, operate. And when we say BTM, we're talking about all cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin. We'll discuss how criminals may use them. I don't think it's a coincidence that Lourdes understands the criminal mind, even though she's basically an honest person. And then we'll draw some preliminary conclusions about where BTMs are headed. There are lots of different cryptocurrencies. These are just a sampling of them. The most popular ones first, Bitcoin, as well as Ethereum. Those are the two top cryptocurrencies. There are new ones every day, literally every day. So why are cryptocurrencies so attractive to criminals, and why do we associate them with criminals, even though, as cryptocurrency proponents like to say, cryptocurrency is just like cash, and everything you can do with cash you can do with cryptocurrency, and we don't always say the same things about cash, except that in fact financial institutions worry a lot about cash. So the fact that it's just like cash and it is somewhat anonymous, pseudo-anonymous or pseudonymous, because there is a public and private key for every Bitcoin transaction or any cryptocurrency transaction that's based on the blockchain technology, which is most of them. Therefore, there's a record of every transfer. That's the good news. The bad news is that while the public key might be associated with a company, the private key is held by the individual, and therefore there is in effect a pseudonym, hence the term pseudo-anonymous or pseudonymous. And we've talked about exchangers. That's the term that the US government, US Treasury, FinCEN uses for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency exchanges. Why are we talking about exchangers and exchanges at all? I thought we were going to talk about BTMs. Answer, because BTMs, when they convert currencies from dollars to Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, or the other way around, are acting as exchangers of currency. Therefore, they're covered by these rules. And it's an unfortunate fact that not all exchangers and not all BTM operators are alike. Some do their very best to follow the rules, and I've seen cases where they do more than most financial institutions. But there are also exchangers that advertise anonymity, that don't collect customer identification, PII, personal identification information at all. And they advertise this really bad. What is cryptocurrency used for? Yes, it's used for illicit transactions as well as open and transparent and above board transactions. It's non-face-to-face by definition, and that includes BTMs as well as online internet cryptocurrency transactions. So non-face-to-face, as anybody in the banking business knows, is higher risk. It's a decentralized currency with limited government involvement. So if anything goes wrong, like your Bitcoin is stolen from an exchange, which unfortunately happens from time to time, I get asked, well, because I'm also a lawyer and they think I know something, I get asked, so what should I do if my Bitcoin's stolen? And my response is, you wanted a currency outside the reach of the government, you got it, good luck. So there aren't the same kinds of protections that you have with credit and debit cards and even bank accounts. Something gets stolen from your bank account, you have recourse against the bank. Something that gets stolen against, and you may have deposit insurance as well. No such thing in the cryptocurrency space. Although again, we shouldn't paint every BTM operator and exchanger with the same brush. So you have to conduct due diligence to find out which ones are the honest ones. The transmittals of Bitcoin are rapid and typically non-reversible, so it's easier to steal. And it's a fluctuating currency, which means that it's going to be a challenge if you're in a low margin business. So why is this bad news for exchangers? What's the bad news for exchangers, including BTM operators? Well, first of all, that the merchant is going to be taking on an exchange risk. Second of all, banks are very suspicious of exchangers since they are classified as MSBs, and that's a problem because MSBs are viewed as high risk by banks, and therefore, like other MSBs, they're always in danger of being debanked, demarketed by a bank. So finally, the FinCEN guidance. FinCEN in 2013 said that exchangers, and again, BTM operators would be in this category, must have an AML program just as MSBs, money services businesses, the traditional brick and mortar business where you want to send money to somebody in another country or another part of the country and you pay a fee, and it could be done by Western Union or MoneyGram or 100 other money transmission services. But if you're a cryptocurrency exchanger, you're treated the same way. That means you have to file SARs and CTRs, suspicious activity reports, and currency transaction reports. And you have to have all four pillars of an AML program. Now, some of you who are listening to this will think that I'm an old fogey and that I've forgotten that in May 2018, there was a fifth pillar introduced. And you're right, there was a fifth pillar introduced for banks and certain other limited financial institutions. Not, however, not for MSBs. So MSBs have the traditional four pillars. And what are those? We're going to talk about them in greater detail in a minute. Having written policies, procedures, and controls, designating a compliance officer, conducting an independent AML audit, and training of appropriate personnel. Those are the four pillars. You must do those as part of your AML program. So back to the FinCEN guidance. Who does it cover? It covers businesses that are exchanging cryptocurrency or issuing a cryptocurrency. And in the case of issuers, they have the authority to redeem it. Those are called administrators. In the case of exchangers, they're exchanging either virtual currency for another virtual currency or for a fiat currency. I used to call the fiat currency US dollars, but things have moved on. The bad news for exchangers is their on-site examinations are conducted by the Internal Revenue Service, not the tax people. There's a special group who does AML examinations for businesses that do not have a federal functional regulator. And that includes a wide range of businesses like casinos, insurance companies, jewelers and dealers in precious metals, and most of all, MSBs. MSBs are state regulated, and therefore the IRS takes charge of their examination. So if you happen to be an MSB exchanger or including a BTM operator and you get a call from the IRS, we'd like to stop by, don't say, I filed my taxes. Say, what time is good? Don't hesitate. I tell clients, never hesitate in dealing with a regulator, an examiner, or law enforcement. Hesitation is death. And what happens? What are you supposed to do if you're a cryptocurrency exchanger? You're supposed to register with states. Each state has its own requirements, and with FinCEN itself. The failure to do that is a felony, and it's a really good idea to do it as a result. Really good idea to register. Although, as we're going to see, it's surprising how many don't register. So, AML program requirements. Very nice graphic, courtesy of Sam Moses and his team at AllSec. And what are the difficult aspects of these four pillars? Answer: in some ways, all of them. Written policies, procedures, and controls, PPCs, are often incomplete. They're often not comprehensive. They're supposed to be based on a written risk assessment. Often that doesn't happen. We're going to talk about where some of these things are written down in a minute. Designation of an anti-money laundering compliance officer. Sounds easy, but it has to be somebody who's qualified. Can't be the youngest person in the room or the newest hire. That happens all the time. Really bad idea. There needs to be a periodic independent anti-money laundering review or audit. That is something that's often put off by businesses small and large because there isn't a clear time period that is listed in the regulations, in the law, or for that matter, in regulatory guidance. I recommend every year. Most legitimate institutions do it every year to 18 months. This is a very heavily changing field, and therefore, really good idea to do it every year. Plus, more credibility. Plus, if you're a cryptocurrency exchanger, and you've got an AML program, and you need a bank, and you are going to need a bank in most cases, because you're going to be dealing with fiat currency at some point in the life cycle of a transaction. Well, in that case, the bank has to be satisfied that you have a robust program. And the first question they're going to ask is, when was your last independent AML review and who did it. If you say 2 years, that's a fail. If you say I'm the AML compliance officer and I did it, that's a fail. Has to be an independent person, not reporting to the compliance function or to the person in the compliance function that the compliance person reports to. If you both report to the general counsel or the chief operating officer, that's a fail. That doesn't work. It has to be somebody independent. Training, easy to fail. Oh no, we didn't train our board of directors. They're too important. Sorry, everybody gets trained. We didn't train our CEO because she is so busy these days getting the business up and running. Sorry, everybody gets trained. We signed up for a live conference, an in-person live conference event, and we're all using the same ID and sneaking in at various times. Oh, come on. I've actually seen this with a major financial institution. I run into a friend of mine at a conference. Wait a minute, your name isn't Patty Smith. What are you doing with Patty Smith? Oh, great embarrassment. Well, we're sharing. Major financial institution, save money. Guess what? That major financial institution was hit with a major fine. Sorry, I don't know what that is, but we need to stop it. So do things right. This is an area that the IRS will be looking at and your bank is going to be looking at, and people like me who do real independent audits and reviews are looking at. What are the requirements for exchangers? Record keeping for customers over $3,000, but not CIP, Customer Identification Program. Ran into somebody at a conference recently who was talking about CIP for MSPs. Sorry, doesn't exist. Now you can adopt it. Is it a good idea? Is it a best practice? Great idea. What is CIP, Customer Identification Program? Identifying and verifying the identity of your customers. So good idea to have it, but not required for MSPs. And you've got to be monitoring your customers and transactions in order to find suspicious activities that are reportable in a SAR, suspicious activity report. So that means you got to be looking for it. If you're not looking, you're not going to find it. That's just an unfortunate fact of life. Are there things that I advise not to do? I've mentioned some of them, but let me tell you a story about PPCs. I was doing an assessment, not an audit, of a major financial institution, and I asked if they had escalation procedures for suspicious activities, which means if somebody, say a teller, finds a suspicious activity, they know who to report to and the transaction gets moved up the chain. The answer was, oh yes, we have them. And I said, can I see them? And the answer was, I'm sorry, they're not written down. Well, that just doesn't count. It just does not count. These others, I'm calling them program knots, I've already mentioned. MSBs are going to be viewed as high risk for banks. They're going to be subject to increased due diligence, annual CDD refresh. You're going to be asked for copies of your AML program. Don't hesitate in handing them over. You're going to be asked for copies of your last independent AML review. Don't hesitate, but make sure it's a real review. If it does not have recommendations, it's not a real independent AML. Will you ever get beyond the risk of de-risking by your bank? Answer, no. Can you reassure the bank that you're not like those other crooks? Absolutely. But you've got to work at it in a way that other financial institutions do not. And it doesn't help that MSBs don't have a federal regulator. It just raises the concern that banks have. So you want to reassure them by having a robust program. Is it unfair that your program is going to be looked at more closely than others? Well, maybe, but that's the way it is sometimes. What are your resources? Because there are some good things in this space. And yes, one of them is the BSA AML Examination Manual for MSPs. 159 pages, lots of detail. A friend of mine named Helen Trina Roosberg said it was the greatest gift ever presented by the regulators. We take it for granted. Don't ever ask the SEC for their examination manual, or the CFTC, or the CFPB, or virtually any other financial regulator other than a federal banking regulator for their examination procedures for AML or for anything else. They will laugh at you. But the banking regulators have been making their examination manuals public for years, not just this one in particular. There's also one for banks called the FFIEC manual. Yes, it's 2008, but that's the most recent one. They haven't updated it. And read the appendices. The appendices have things in them that are not in the main body and not in the regs. So it's over 10 years old. It's still definitive. It's a rule book that the examiners use, both federal and state, when they arrive on your doorstep. It's a set of best practices. It's educational. It has the role of the relevant government agencies listed. Really, really helpful. If I'm doing an independent AML audit, I ask to see a copy of the manual. That's an odd request. Have you printed it out? Oh, yes, here it is. And I'm shown this pristine book. You've just failed my examination. I want to see yellow stickies, and I want to see highlights, and I want to see all kinds of things in that book because I want you to be referring to it. What are some red flags? We don't have definitive red flags in the cryptocurrency space, but these are just some of them. Fraudulent identification documents, obvious. Transfers of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies or wire transfers of US dollars to or from offshore exchangers. Higher risk, that's a red flag. Do the non-US Bitcoin cryptocurrency exchangers and BTM operators have the same regulatory requirements? You might think, oh yeah, that's a reasonable thing. They should have the same requirements. You're right, they should, but they don't. Every country varies. And then there are standard types of red flags like strange account activity. This customer said they're going to buy and hold cryptocurrency as investment, and you see them trading constantly, and the volume's getting very high. You're dealing with an exchanger that advertises anonymity, doesn't ask for PII, personal identification information. That's a high risk. Why do I have this slide in every presentation of mine? Any of you seen my presentations in person or on the web, in a webinar? You've seen this before. Is it because it's the cover photograph on the first Led Zeppelin album in approximately 1969, my last year of high school, and therefore made a big impression on me? No, although I still like Led Zeppelin. It's because you can see compliance failures coming. They don't crash and burn, they burn and crash and burn. We'll spend a minute or two before I turn the program over to my colleague Lourdes Miranda. We'll spend a minute or two on compliance failures. These are compliance failures in the cryptocurrency space, and probably the first civil enforcement action was against Ripple Labs. They're still in business. Ripple is a major cryptocurrency. They survived. Relatively small civil money penalty, $700,000. They failed to register. Geez, how tough is that? They failed to implement an effective AML program. Failed to file SARs. These were called willful violations. They could have been they could have been sanctioned much more heavily. So they got lucky, they got good lawyers, they started cleaning things up immediately. Excuse me. So there are things you can do when something goes wrong, but you want to avoid being in that position. And one way you avoid it is by having a robust program. A really serious enforcement action was against a foreign MSB, but notice the enforcement action is taken in the US against the foreign Bitcoin exchanger, one of the largest virtual currency exchanges by volume at that time, which was only 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and huge amounts of Bitcoin transactions. My favorite, though, is how their customer service representatives, quote, offered advice on how to process and access money obtained from illegal drug sales on darknet markets like Silk Road. Really? Your customer service was so good that you help people commit crimes? Wow, that's what I call customer service. So obviously a bad idea. Now this is a table from the Bitcoin enforcement action, but the reason I include it is that it shows you how serious it is to fail to register as an exchanger, an MSB, and that can get you up to 5 years of imprisonment. And then there are the money laundering crimes, up to 20 years, and it's pretty serious stuff. Probably a bad idea if you don't plan to comply to play in this space. So then we get to what's going on outside of the enforcement and regulatory world. Well, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, it's another unit of the U.S. Treasury. OFAC has issued guidance that says that cryptocurrency wallets now need to be checked as part of the SDN list, specially designated nationals. That's the list that every business, and for that matter, every citizen must check before they do anything. People get confused sometimes about OFAC, and I should tell you that a major red flag, if you're talking to a cryptocurrency exchanger or to an MSB or to a financial institution of any type, a major red flag is you say to them, you ask them, do you have an AML program? And they say, yes, we check OFAC. That is a fail on many levels. One is they don't know the difference between OFAC and AML. Two is everybody's required to check OFAC. And three is you still haven't mentioned AML. Is that all you're going to talk about, is that you check names against the list? Nowhere near enough. The other major development, Financial Action Task Force, FATF, which issues 40 recommendations periodically. It's just updated its recommendations. Again, there are 40 of them, and they added to recommendation 15, and they actually just came out with a draft interpretive note. A bit of arcania in the FATF space is that an interpretive note to a FATF recommendation is as good as a recommendation. It is considered part of the international standard, the interpretive notes. Why are they in notes and not the recommendation itself? Because they want to keep the recommendations relatively short. So they put more detailed stuff in interpretive notes, but you got to read both. And it mandates essentially a kind of system that is close to the US. Some kind of licensing or registration, some type of monitoring by the government. No details because each government is supposed to comply on its own. So that is the major part of my presentation. I will tell you, though, that it's easy to paint with a broad brush, and that is all cryptocurrencies bad. No, it's either a currency or an asset or both, and it can have all sorts of beneficial outcomes, like allowing unbanked people to be part of the banking system. Transfers are much, much cheaper and in many cases more secure than transferring money. It's instantaneous. The underlying technology, the blockchain, is keeping a public registry of every transaction. So if you're engaged in honest activities, that's a good thing, because that way, if something goes wrong, you have a record of where the cryptocurrency came from and where it went. So lots of advantages. The same would be true of BTMs. Are there some BTMs that are operators that are legitimate? Of course. Are there some that are clearly criminal? Of course. That's true of every business. But if you're dealing with a BTM operator, excuse me, if you're dealing with a BTM operator who doesn't ask for PII or who advertises anonymity, you're doing so at your own risk. Excuse me, because those BTM operators are most likely engaged in criminal or illicit activity of some type, and you run the risk in dealing with them of being targeted yourself. Why did you choose that BTM, the one that advertised, no, we don't ask you for any of your detailed information, rather than one that's legit? And that's a really good question that you should ask yourself. If you're a criminal and you want anonymity, good luck. Every BTM has a camera. Everything's being recorded. So I'll turn, on that happy note, I will turn the session over to Lourdes Miranda to talk about the illicit side of cryptocurrency. Lourdes?
Thank you, Ross, for your kind introduction, and thank you, AllSec, for inviting me to present. Good afternoon, everyone from Washington, D.C. Here's a short list of terms for your convenience. I would like to emphasize that in the crypto sphere, public and private keys and the term addresses are used interchangeably. Now, moving on to the dark and deep webs, or as some people call it, the onion router, the Tor. Transnational criminal organizations and terrorist networks will more than likely use these webs to communicate, conduct research, solicit open accounts, execute transactions, and campaign for terrorist funding with increased security and some anonymity, making it more challenging to trace their online activities. According to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's 2017 National Drug Threat Assessment Report, Bitcoin is the most common form of payment for drug sales on the darknet marketplaces and is emerging as a desirable method to transfer illicit drug proceeds internationally. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 2008, in a New York federal court, a 27-year-old woman named Zumbia Shanaz pled guilty to financially supporting the Islamic State terrorist group with the scheme that employed money laundering and bank fraud, along with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. She was identified by law enforcement when officials detected overseas wire transfers designed to avoid financial reporting requirements. In separate reporting, the Islamic State affiliated darknet site called Isdarat, accessible through the Onion router, aka Tor browser, sought Bitcoin contributions from supporters. I strongly recommend anyone who doesn't have a background in navigating in these webs to take a class, as well as to assist you with creating an avatar to give you more anonymity when using these webs. Using the dark and deep webs, Reddit is a source criminal enterprises and terrorist networks will likely use to communicate and conduct research. You can research the latest and popular cryptocurrencies that are being mined by organizations, companies, individuals, and countries such as Russia, China, Iran, Ukraine, and North Korea. Russia has been known to hire individuals to mine cryptocurrencies on behalf of Russia. You can review the latest trends bad actors are using and review which wallet services and exchanges that only require limited or no personally identifiable information, which is excellent information for money launderers and terrorist organizations who are seeking to circumvent anti-money laundering and counter of terrorist financing controls. On Reddit, you can also monitor which exchangers, mixers, shifters, and wallet services that are popular and which to avoid and why. You'll also see reporting on Reddit identifying which services were hacked or which services were shut down by U.S. and international law enforcement. You'll also review ratings, complaints, and recommendations. Reddit is an excellent source for investigators and analysts to develop investigative leads and collect intelligence on transnational criminal organizations and terrorist networks who are using BTMs to commit financial crimes, particularly money laundering and terrorist financing. I strongly recommend dedicating time on a daily basis and assign analysts on a full-time basis to monitor Reddit, to review Reddit, and analyze daily reporting within the cryptosphere. BTMs are most likely the preferred method of criminal organizations to launder proceeds into, within, and out of the United States, and for terrorist networks to finance operations, because BTMs operate like a standard ATM by easily providing secure ways to deposit, send, and convert Bitcoin into cash to be dispensed as prepaid cards or just cash, and to convert cash into Bitcoin, thereby circumventing traditional financial institutions, anti-money laundering, and the countering of terrorist financing protocols. This month, the U.S. Department of Justice released a report identifying a case where criminals based in Bulgaria and Romania defrauded Americans by claiming to be U.S. military personnel on an online auction site who needed to sell their vehicles and other items before their next deployment. The Bulgarians and Romanian nationals requested prepaid cards, Amazon gift cards, PayPal MyCash cards, U.S. postal money orders, MoneyGram, and Western Union as payment. These quick cash alternative payment methods can be used at international BTMs to purchase and send Bitcoin without having to provide personally identifiable information or only provide limited identification. When the Bulgarians and Romanians received payment, they converted these cash funds to cryptocurrencies to pay their foreign-based associates. According to the indictment, the foreign-based associates exchanged cryptocurrency into local fiat currency on behalf of the Romanian-based members of the conspiracy, knowing that they were exchanging Bitcoin that represented the proceeds of fraud. According to a different 2018 U.S. Department of Justice report, with the Islamic State's physical caliphate in shambles, revenue from oil and taxes have disappeared, but cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and other currencies constitute an alternative funding source for terrorist operations. The New York case identifying the woman in New York, Zubia, as an Islamic State terrorist group supporter using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to finance terrorist operations is just the beginning. Before purchasing and sending cryptocurrency at a BTM, you have to open a wallet to generate a public key, a private key, and a QR code. When you think about the wallet, think of a bank account. When you think of public and private keys, think of them as your bank account numbers. And don't give anyone your private key, because your private key is like your ATM PIN. You can use the QR code from your cell phone or burner phone at the BTM to purchase and send cryptocurrencies, as well as withdraw fiat currency. A wallet gives you the capability to store, receive, send, and maintain cryptocurrency balances. Transnational criminal organizations and terrorist networks will more than likely use foreign-based wallet services that have weak identification requirements to open multiple wallets with the same or different wallet service using multiple fraudulent or legitimate identities, giving them the ability to split their Bitcoin into multiple wallets without having to disclose their true identity. Some international wallet services only require an email to open an account. In the traditional banking world, if you're not a corporation or a company, it raises red flags if you open multiple accounts. But in the crypto sphere, it's common, expected, and it's smart to open multiple wallets with different wallet services and split your Bitcoin into these wallets just in case one wallet service gets hacked or shut down by law enforcement. Some international exchangers, including US-based exchanges like Coinbase, where you can also purchase Bitcoin, have strong AML and CTF protocols, which is why transnational criminal organizations and terrorist networks will more than likely gravitate towards international BTMs, because some international BTMs don't require any or only require limited identification, giving money launderers and terrorist networks an excellent opportunity to circumvent AML controls or counter-terrorist financing controls. Some international BTMs accept cash deposits and withdrawals without verifying their customer's identification, without verifying their source of funds and bank account information. Some international BTMs also accept prepaid Visa and MasterCards, requiring limited or no identification. And some BTMs will also allow you to sell your Bitcoin and have cash dispensed right on the spot, while others will give you the option to have your Bitcoin sent directly into a wallet where your Bitcoin can be safely stored and sent to other criminal and terrorist entities. Most BTM transactions can be managed on a cell phone by just scanning the QR code that can be found on your wallet paper receipt or retrieved from your digital wallet receipt stored in your cell phone. Criminal organizations and terrorist networks will more than likely use burner phones to further disguise their identities. Some organizations will more than likely also bribe BTM owners to look the other way, to not request identification, or even collude with them. International BTMs are located in a variety of locations such as airports, coffee shops, land casinos, casinos on ships, restaurants, train stations, company offices, kiosks, shopping malls, supermarkets, subway systems, and money service businesses. The most threatening is when bad actors are purchasing their own BTMs disguised as legitimate registered money service business or a hawala in a brick and mortar operation, and collude with existing money service business owners or hawaladors to place their own BTMs within their operation to facilitate their financial crimes. These types of operations allow bad actors to build relationships with local banks and facilitate their money laundering schemes and terrorist financing by exploiting international financial institutions that have weak AML and CTF requirements, with the goal of laundering their illicit funds into financial institutions that have strong AML and CTF requirements, particularly financial institutions that have corresponding banking relationships with the United States. These type of relationships will ultimately lead to integrating illicit funds into the U.S. financial system and into the U.S. economy. There are two main types of BTMs that bad actors can purchase. The basic ones allowing the users only to purchase Bitcoins, and the more advanced ones enabling both the users to buy and sell Bitcoin. BTMs can also be purchased online, allowing bad actors to mask their identities and intentions. And finally, the key takeaways. BTMs will likely replace international wire transfers for transnational criminal organizations and terrorist networks, because BTMs operate like standard ATMs by easily providing secure ways to deposit, send, and convert Bitcoin into cash, to be dispensed as prepaid cards or just cash, and to convert cash into Bitcoin with limited or no identification, thereby circumventing weak international financial institution AML and CTF protocols. Thank you for participating, and thank you also again for inviting us to speak. And if you have any questions, please use the chat box. And if we weren't able to catch your question today, please email me or Ross. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And as a reminder, to learn more about Allsec's AML services, please contact Mr. Sam Moses, the Director of AML Services, at 214-492-6015, or you can also email Sam at sam.moses@allsectech.com. Thank you all again for participating. You have a great day. Hi, here's one question that I have. How would a bank balance settle BTMs? If we have an ATM, we see the settlements and the cash to settle. Mike, to answer your question, the blockchain is like a financial statement. You need to monitor Bitcoin transactions on the blockchain. If you require a further answer, please email me offline. Thank you for asking the question.
Lourdes, I can take some of these. Lourdes. So next question. How does the IRS implement AML for those businesses under its jurisdiction? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I would start with the MSB manual. That's what they're looking for when they come to any of the businesses under their jurisdiction. Not just MSBs, but there are no specific manuals for other types of businesses, so the MSB manual is probably the best thing. Financial institutions who have customers with BTMs on site but don't operate or own, what controls do you recommend? I would recommend the same controls I'd recommend if the BTM operator was a direct customer, and that is, I would recommend enhanced due diligence. In other words, let's be more specific. A bank has a customer that is a 7-Eleven or a corner store and market of some type, and there's a BTM in the store, but the market owner doesn't operate it. Yes, I would want to do some enhanced due diligence on that BTM because it's in the store of my customer, even if my customer is not using it. Would you foresee specific AML risk for OTC type of trading between a company which owns assets and its customers? I'm sorry, but we're not covering that type of trading, and I don't know the answer to that. But again, a company that is exchanging cryptocurrency assets for fiat currency or other cryptocurrencies, then they would be subject to an AML program. Are there AML risks for trading between a company which owns assets and its customers? There are AML risks everywhere. I guess I don't understand the question. I'd be happy to invite the questioner to be more specific.
Hi, Ross. Can I re-answer one question for Mike?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi, Mike. There are tools out there, companies that offer tools so you can monitor and analyze Bitcoin transactions on the blockchain. There's a multiple list, so depending on what you're looking for, there are tools that apply to every mission that you're involved in. So again, please reach to me and Ross offline, and I can provide names of companies and tools that would apply to what you're looking for. Thanks again, Mike. Thanks, Ross.
Okay, Lourdes. Let's see if what are specific risks of banking exchangers who own, operate BTMs, and what controls should financial institutions have in place? Well, banking exchangers, there's no such thing. If you're talking about cryptocurrency, oh, sorry, you mean banking as, okay, the risk to the financial institution for having an exchanger as a customer who owns, operates BTMs. Again, I would do extensive due diligence on the BTM operator's AML program. That would be a starting point. What sort of PII do they require? What sorts of, how robust is their AML program? Are the 4 pillars fully in place? Is there a risk assessment? How are they dealing with foreign exchanges? Do they deal with foreign exchanges, or do they limit themselves? So I would have extensive due diligence in place, and I would refresh it every year. I'd want to make sure that independent reviews are robust as well. but certainly greater risks for those who operate BTMs. I would say facilitating money laundering is the major risk. So this I don't understand, but sums would be less than USD 3,000 per user. If the question is what happens to the record keeping requirements, could you keep it to below $3,000 per user and still be compliant? You're now in a very high risk area, so I'm not going to comment on that. Okay, this is a very long question. Thank you. An IT company who owns cryptocurrency, its own cryptocurrency, is being exchanged on legitimate crypto exchanges. Now the IT company feels that the fees are too high in the exchange or wants to sell the crypto over the counter directly to their customers. I gather from us there should be an AML program in place. Is that the main point? Well, again, if the IT company is the issuer and is selling the cryptocurrency, then odds are they would be considered an administrator, although that would be something that would need to be looked at, and therefore there should be an AML program in place. But that would be the question is, would the IT company, the issuer, be considered an exchanger or an administrator and therefore covered by the MSB rules? So can't give you an opinion on that, although I think it's a good question and also a bit too specific for us. I think, Lourdes, do we have any other questions?
I am looking now. I don't see any new ones.
These are really good questions. So we have people who are in the field and are confronting some of the more difficult issues. Unfortunately, there are not easy answers to a lot of these questions.
Ross, did you answer Aaron's question? I'm trying to pull it up now.
Let me see.
Yes. There it is.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I talked about the MSB manual.
Okay.
Again, implement AML. I'm not sure what is meant by that, but remember that the IRS is a whole range of businesses, so it's been in the business of on-site examination for quite some time. I think it is 12:56. We are just about done. Did you cover conclusions, Lourdes? Let me
Yes.
see where we are.
I don't see any other questions.
You already did the conclusions?
Correct.
Sorry, I had to step away for a minute. So we have our contact information. All of you will be getting our deck once you apply for and receive the certificate of participation. And let me think if there's anything else. Yes, this is being recorded, so the recording will become available in the next week or two, and we will make sure to make that known on LinkedIn and through other media. So watch for that. You can always contact me directly through LinkedIn or Lourdes directly through LinkedIn. And if you really want to get on our good side, you can invite us to connect on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Ross.
So I think that's it. Thank you, Lourdes. And
thank you, Ross.
Great. We'll call it a day and thank AllSec for sponsoring this webinar. And I'm signing off. Thanks very much.